Welcome to the first episode of the Kime Zone. Kime means focus in Japanese. I developed the Kime Zone as a place where we can connect to focus, discover, obtain our zen, vitality, and centering. Today's episode is staying informed and using wisdom during the pandemic. My special guest today is Dr. Danya Anouti. A little bit about Dr. Danya. Dr. Danya is a physician who is currently pursuing her residency training in Washington, D.C. at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. Her interests include using various modalities from various disciplines to develop treatment plans to help bring about mental and physical health in her patients. She enjoys collaborating with her patients in order to develop a plan that will work best for them. Prior to pursuing a career in medicine, she served in Teach for America and AmeriCorps as a high school science teacher and worked as a personal trainer and group exercise instructor for several years. Dr. Danya has an extensive background in research with a focus on behavioral neuroscience research with publications in journals such as Neurobiology of Learning and Memory and Stress. She conducted additional research focusing on obesity funded by the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases at the Johns Hopkins University. Outside of medicine, Dr. Danya is passionate about fitness and competed in the sport of strongman. She won Maryland's Strongest Woman competition in 2017 and 2018. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the zone with Dr. Danya. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kime Zone. I am here with my friend, colleague, Dr. Danya Anouti, who's going to answer some of the questions that we've received. We'll probably get to all of the questions we've received, but she'll be answering questions on this pandemic that's impacting so many people. It's impacted me personally. I had a dear friend who passed away from it on Sunday, and it's impacting many people across the globe. So I wanted to do this special episode, and Dr. Danya, you're the first one. This is the first episode of the Kime Zone. So thank you for doing this on such an important topic. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in? What is it like being a doctor right now? You are in the front line in DC, in the emergency room, day in and day out. What is it like right now? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing as this pandemic is going on?
Well, first off, Paula, I'd like to take a moment to thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And appreciate the opportunity to sort of share some of the experiences that I've had so far. So like you said, I'm here in Washington, D.C. We're currently on lockdown, as most places are, in terms of, people are not able, they have stay-at-home orders, right? So actually, then I've seen posts on social media that of doctors sharing a similar sentiment. It's kind of eerie right now in the ER, in the sense that we don't have, our volume is a little bit lower than normal. We're not seeing people coming in for like primary care type of concerns. So a lot of them are great, thankfully, going and seeing their primary care doctors. But so that means that the people that are coming in are actually really, really sick. And it's a good thing, though, because then we have the resources available and the staff and the manpower to help those people. But we kind of feel like we're calling it like the calm before the storm, waiting for the war to begin sort of a thing. But I mean, we definitely haven't been hit like New York or some of these other cities, thankfully. But supposedly, according to this algorithm that I think is coming out of University of Washington, we're gonna start to get hit and potentially peak around like April 18th. But again, that's a projection, so we'll see how that goes. So yeah,
So
crazy.
what are you seeing? Like when you walk into can you give us an example or an experience of a case that you might have had to have worked on, or having to talk to a loved one who might have a loved one who just went in and they can't see their loved one because of the virus and whatnot? What is the atmosphere like in the ER amongst the nurses, amongst the patients right now?
Yeah. So I'll just first off start off by saying that we have separated out the two different areas. One for patients that we suspect they might have COVID based on their symptoms, and so they're completely blocked off from the rest of the ER, and so having to even go in to that section of the ER is really, really scary. I remember the first time going in to see a COVID patient, putting on all my gear and everything. I was literally shaking. But I knew that, this is it. I have to go in. I have to do this. As people need me. People need me to evaluate them. So, but I mean, right, for purposes of HIPAA, I can't necessarily go into a lot of detail about specific patients, but I did have a guy who was like in his 50s. He had some other like medical comorbidities, so diabetes, high blood pressure, coming in with shortness of breath, a cough, and just didn't look too good. And so having to tell him like it's a high probability that you have this, it was pretty scary and pretty emotional. He was like, well, what do I do now? And what we're seeing is that some people, they will get better, and you'll suspect like, okay, they're going to be okay, and then suddenly they take a turn for the worse. So it's a pretty nasty bug, for sure. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
No, you did. You did. The emotional toll and you going in there. So how do you feel? Okay, so you're going in there every day, you're watching this. You also can get the virus as well. How are you protecting yourself? How are you feeling? How do you mentally prepare for that every day walking in there?
yeah, it's a little bit like you kind of feel like a soldier. And going into medicine, you don't necessarily think that you're going to have to be in that position during your lifetime of practice. But yeah, it's a sombering sort of like, okay, well, this is what I'm here for. This is why I train. This is why I spent hours, stayed up all those nights studying for boards, and so that I could be here for people. And so yeah, it's scary, but I think at this point, like, I'm starting to get used to it kind of too. And I think others were just like, okay, let's go. Like, it's time to get to work, and we got to focus on patients because they need us. So not too much time thinking about. I don't spend too much time thinking about myself, and I feel like others on the front lines kind of feel a similar way. So yeah.
So I think you put it in perspective for me when I was following you on Instagram, and you had mentioned and you had recommended that people start looking into life insurance. And if you don't have a living will, you need to make sure you have all of everything in order with this going on right now. And when you said that, it was, wow, this thing is serious. This is real. When did you come to the point to realize, you know what, I might really need to start talking to my attorney about insurance and my living will, and how did that make you feel when you got to that point?
Yeah, I think it was learning that doctors in Italy were dying, China they were dying, and then there was one doctor who's like in his like I'm like in my late 20s, so he's in my age that passed away, and that was kind of a whoa, okay, we're not
Right.
invincible. And there's other people are everybody was saying up to that point that, oh well, this is primarily affecting older populations with medical comorbidities like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart failure. But to see him, you know, pass away, and yeah, that was a moment. And that, and also thinking about, okay, well, what's going to happen to my family? What kinds of things do I want if that happens to me? I mean, it's a risk. I mean, being in medicine in general is a risk. It's being exposed to blood, guts, everything that the fluids that come out of people
Right.
end up on you. So Yeah, it's you try to protect yourself, but inevitably something will come on your face or and whatnot. But yeah, like this is pretty lethal, um, pretty dangerous virus at this point. So what you gotta prepare. So
Right, right.
um,
So we have a question from Jamie in Massachusetts, and her question
mhm.
is, if there was one thing you could ask the governor of your state to do that he or she might not be doing right now to help you take better care of your patients, what would that be?
Yeah, I think we're finally seeing what a lot of doctors are have wanted, which is for people to stay at home. And so for governors, several governors in several states have issued stay at home orders. I think that was like one of the best things that could be done. And historically, cities that had these quarantines in place tended to do better in terms of mortality from outbreaks such as the one that we're facing. So I think that was really essential, um, honestly. And yeah, I mean, as long as people continue to do that, there's been a lot of talk also about personal protective equipment, and I think that governments are the government's stepping up, and that we're seeing some of the promises that have been made online, and or excuse me, that have been made in press conferences coming to pass. So yeah, I think that our governments are really getting it together and really helping us out, so that we can fight this war, for lack of a better way to put it.
Right, right. So let's talk a little bit about the virus itself.
Okay.
So I have a question from Courtney here in Iowa, and her question is a question that I think a lot of people have been wondering and asking is, where exactly did this virus come from? And
hmm
what should we really be doing to prepare ourselves and our health for the long run with this virus?
Well, so according to the CDC, we don't really know the exact source of the current outbreak of this coronavirus. According to JAMA, which is another really reputable source, we suspect that there's a connection between like an animal to human jump. So coronaviruses in general, they tend to come from bats. So we suspect that, like SARS, for example, might have come from human exposure or a jump, basically from a bat to a person. And so at this time, we suspect that this particular coronavirus came from some kind of exposure that occurred in a seafood market in Wuhan, China. But again, we haven't exactly pinpointed the exact source, and so I'm sure that as we know more about this virus, that will come out. But to answer the second part of your question, I think the main thing is really to know your health. So a lot of times patients will come in and we'll ask them, "Oh, what are your medical problems?" And they have no idea. They don't know what surgeries they've had before. They don't know what mom and dad have had in the past. They don't even know what medications they're taking. And I think that is really, really key, is that, we're people too. While we are doctors, we're people. We see a lot of patients, and you are important to us. But being your own advocate and knowing your own health is vital. And then, of course, things like eating a healthy diet. There's a lot of foods that are known to boost immunity, which we can go into if you'd like. Exercising, this is a perfect time. You have no excuse.
Right,
You're
right,
staying home.
right,
um,
right.
Go for a walk,
Exactly.
sleeping. Please sleep, get a good amount of rest, stress management, um, things like that. And we are seeing right now that there is this association between like diabetes and coronavirus, which is really interesting. So again, emerging information, but yeah, just things that mom always told you, eat your vegetables
Right. Eat your
um,
veggies.
and go to bed early.
Right. Get
So
those 8 hours in, everyone. 8 hours.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
No, I totally agree. I've started working out more.
at least more consistently now that I'm working from home as well. So I am not out and about. I only go out for grocery runs. That's it. And so and it's been a great, it's been great. It's been your energy levels are different. I tend to work out in the morning. I find that's the best
Mm-hmm.
time for me to work out. I work
Mm-hmm.
out in the morning. I'm eating healthier. I don't order out, so I'm saving money, which is amazing. I didn't realize how much money I spent because we were always on the run. But I'm getting smart. Just today, I had gotten up and I made sure I had cleaned up my chicken and seasoned it and everything. So now I have it all in bags in the freezer. So all you got to do is pull it out and cook it when you're ready, right? So
Nice.
doing some of those things to get you prepared. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I totally agree with that. Well, you pretty much told us a lot about what you know about the virus so far, and it's evolving. So we're finding out more information as this continues on. But another question that keeps coming up is how long does the virus live on surfaces, right? So you have people who are throwing alcohol in Amazon boxes, soaking dollar
Mm-hmm.
bills in Clorox. I mean, all sorts of stuff going on in the world right now because they just don't want to have to handle this potentially picking up the virus. So what do we know so far about how long the viruses live on surfaces, and how should we protect ourselves as we're getting our mail and we're interacting with outside life?
Yeah, so there's current studies underway that are comparing, again, this coronavirus compared to previous viruses. And for example, we're learning that like metal, things such as doorknobs, silverware, the virus can live on for about 5 days, give or take. Wood, things like furniture, it can live on those surfaces for like 4 days. For example, plastics, things like packaging, detergent bottles, can live for about 2 to 3 days. Steel, like refrigerators, pots and pans, 2 to 3 days. Shipping boxes, probably about 24 hours. Um, and so far, we haven't really seen any um, association between like coronavirus living on food, like fruits and vegetables, but it's always a good practice anyway to make sure that you properly wash
Right,
all fruits and vegetables because there are other things that are living on those surfaces.
right,
Um, yeah, and I think the main thing is practice good hygiene. So when you're going out to pick up a package or pick up that carry out, I mean, you can put gloves on. That's one option. Or go ahead and wash your hands after you handle the package, throw it away, take the food out. Wash your hands before eating. Um, Things like that. I think a lot of restaurants are being really careful, but you can't account for like when the delivery person picks up your food and then takes it to your house. You don't know if maybe they coughed or the condition of their car, etc.
mhm,
So that's the something to think about. Another thing is shoes. So
hmm,
a lot of people walk in their house with their shoes on, and I would just maybe consider that at least for the time being. There's a lot of junk that lives on the bottom of shoe surfaces. So consider maybe taking your shoes off before entering the house, like having one specific location for them, or maybe like wiping down the bottoms of your shoes, because that can carry a lot of bacteria, and just a lot of things into the home that you don't want to be exposed to. So yeah, and then I mean, basically, be wiping down doorknobs, surfaces. I don't think it's a bad idea at this point to be cautious.
right,
Yeah.
right. So when you go out grocery shopping and things of
Mhm.
that nature, so I'm trying to get on the waiting list here to even do a pickup at Walmart, so I don't actually have to physically go into the store, right?
Ooh,
Or
okay.
have or have things delivered. I'm trying, but the struggle is real out there. People are out there. There. I mean, if you don't get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and get your time in, it's over, right? But for going to the grocery store, so I've seen people wearing masks. I've seen people wearing gloves. But then, of course, if you touch the glove and then you touch your phone or you touch something else, I think it defeats the whole purpose of wearing the glove, right? Because you're still contaminating. So what advice might you have for people outside of staying 6 feet away for social distancing? What advice might you have for people who do have to go out and get into the store to get those essential items?
So I think right now the general advice being given is that you don't necessarily have to wear a mask unless you're around somebody who's sick. But again, it goes back to knowing your own health. So if you're not wearing a mask, then you're taking a risk. If you don't have a mask, then what can you do? You can't wear it anyway because you don't even have one. But we know that, or there's been evidence that a lot of the spread that occurred, at least in China, Italy, seemed to be through people who didn't have symptoms, and they were just kind of walking around shedding the virus. So that's something to be aware of. And you got to make your own decision in terms of your own health, especially if you're somebody that has like medical problems. Maybe it would be wise to wear the mask. But again, if you don't have one, then what are you going to do? I mean, you're out of options, and they're a hot commodity right now.
Right.
The price gouging is real.
Right.
So, I mean, at least I think at a minimum, I think it's wise to wear gloves. I mean, it can't hurt. You can throw them away, or you can save them. Like, Lysol down your gloves afterwards if you don't have a limited supply, or like clean them with alcohol. I think that inevitably you're going to be touching things. So again, like, get into the habit. Maybe when you walk in the door, you wipe down your phone, you take your shoes off and leave them in a specific place. And then, maybe you get in and if you really want to be super cautious, take a shower before doing anything in the home, put your clothes separate, like in a separate area, wash them in hot water, that kind of thing. But again, like, how this is America, right? It's the land of the free. So you can choose how you can fold. Like, we're gonna give you general advice, but again, like, it's up to you to also protect your own health and that of your family. So.
Right. So you had talked about the gentleman who came in to the ER and had some symptoms. When do you feel is the best time to call your primary physician or to call the designated health lines when you are potentially having symptoms? When is a good time to call? Because at the end of the day, there's no vaccine for this. There's no antibiotic for it, right? So you pretty much have to fight it on your own at this point in time, unless you get that severe case where you have to be put on a ventilator or whatnot. When should you start really being concerned?
Yeah, I think if you have a fever, you should call. You should definitely call. There's been a lot of confusion right now because it is late March and the flowers are starting to bloom. So a lot of people are having like the runny nose and sneezing. And again, I err on the side of like caution, and I'm more conservative. I'd rather just call, and I recommend that to people. Just call. It can't hurt, and if you don't, they'll tell you, do you need to come in or not. Another thing that I've seen people recommend is I think Walmart, Amazon, they sell like little like pulse oximeters that you can like put on your finger to check on your oxygen saturation, which is basically how well your body is taking in oxygen through your lungs. And I think that's also another thing. Like, if you have that, that could be wise to check that, because it just gives us more data also when you call your doc, like, hey, my oxygen saturation has been 99%. That tells us, okay, you're doing okay. So I think maybe like within, if you have a fever, even if you're having like a combination of symptoms, like, again, it could be allergies, but I would just call anyway. And also for a public health standpoint, it helps us to know. I think right now, like, the testing is even a difficult thing right now, because there was a point in time where we thought we didn't have enough tests, but again, things are rapidly evolving. So it just helps us to know how many cases we have too. And so, if you do have symptoms, they'll let you know. Your doctor will let you know, or the helpline will let you know if you should come into the hospital or into the ER or not. So, I mean, maybe within the first couple of days, I would call having
Okay.
symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people who have allergies, right?
Yeah.
So I've had a sinus thing going on since January where I had a cough, and the cough just stopped. I've had a cough for probably a month and a half now. And I've been to the doctor and all of that. But yeah, I mean, if you sneeze or cough the wrong way, now everybody thinks you have the virus. So
Yeah.
uh, so what's the right temperature to call at though? And when we say a fever, when should you start getting? Is it 99? Is it 100? Is it 100.4? What is that right number to be concerned about with the fever?
That's right now we're saying like 100.5. Most, that would be a good number to call for. But there's been cases in other countries where people had a temperature of 99 and their lungs look bad, really bad, very sick. So again, this is so new that I would err not to cause anxiety, but I would
Right.
err on the side of caution, especially if you know that you're around people who are elderly or like kids. I would just call just to be on the safe side.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mm.
And I think sometimes when you move, we're getting a little bit of background noise. I don't know if it's your headset
Oh,
thing that's
okay.
playing, maybe. I don't know. Have no clue. But it's a little bit. But I also know you have your white noise going too. So
Yeah.
it could be that too. I get
Okay.
it. I get it. I get it. Okay, so across the
I'll try not to
nation.
move.
Okay. That's hard to do when you're trying to sit down and have a conversation. So across the nation, everybody's trying to slow the spread of this thing. Jamie, again, my friend in Massachusetts, has a question around slowing down and the approaches to slowing down this virus. And her question is, how could citizens already doing all the recommended actions, social distancing, staying at home, except for getting those essential items, frequently washing their hands, disinfecting, provide
Mhm.
additional help? What else can we be? Is there anything else we can be doing?
I love that question because I feel like it speaks to just the like America in that we do want to help other people. And right now we're really like banding together, almost like united.
Mm-hmm.
And this virus doesn't know colors, doesn't know like if you're Democrat or Republican,
Right.
etc. So I think I thought about this, and I think one thing is, check on your neighbors, obviously virtually, see how they're doing, check on family. I've heard of people who are offering, if you know somebody who has like is elderly, has medical problems, have offered to pick up groceries for them so that they're limiting their exposure, and because you have to go out anyway. So I think that's something that, if you can do that, that would help a lot of people out. Another thing is, donate to your favorite nonprofit, is another way to help out. A lot of organizations are really vital in providing medical services, food security to a lot of populations that are struggling right now, especially in light of the fact that we have a huge amount of the population is now unemployed. Another thing is, if you know that you don't have the virus, like consider giving blood as well. You don't really know if we're going to be able to accept people who have the virus, if we're going to be able to accept if they have it and they've been asymptomatic, for example, if we're going to be able to accept their blood products at this point. So that's another option. But then, so those are just a couple of things. And then I've seen people like making masks online, which while in the hospital itself, I don't think that we are accepting them necessarily. I think they're better than nothing. But like, for example, if you're going to the store and you don't have any mask at all because you weren't able to get it because people hoarded them,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's a better option than nothing.
Right.
So maybe you can make it and then share it with neighbors around you or with friends, family. So
Okay.
those are just a couple of things that came to mind.
And you answered. I think it's a great segue into Jamie's next question, because
Mm-hmm.
Jamie was actually asking about hand sewn mask, if they're actually a help or a hindrance. are they even allowed to be used? So it sounds like a lot of the medical profession may not be accepting them potentially, unless it's they're in dire need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's basically what the message that we're getting, at least in the hospital, is, right now we're okay. We have a supply. We're making sure that we don't run out. But at least for individuals, outside of the hospital, again, according to the CDC, cloth masks, they work well for like other conditions. So, and they can help conserve things like N95. So you can use that potentially instead of maybe buying that N95 that you wanted to buy if you're not going into healthcare setting, if your risk is low. So yeah, I mean, it's not the perfect, but we're making do, and I wouldn't call them a hindrance per se,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't call them a help either. They're just an option, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We have another question from Kim here in Iowa. She
Mm-hmm.
wants to know, is using hand sanitizer the same as washing your hands with soap?
So it's not the exact same thing for a number of reasons. One, hand washing is just a good practice. It gets rid of all kinds of bacteria, etc., on the hands. Whereas hand sanitizers that have at least 60% alcohol, I mean, they're effective. But if you don't actually like use them correctly, then you might not get rid of all the bugs that are on your hands, and they actually don't work for viruses such as neurovirus or bacteria such as Clostridium difficile. So it's better than nothing, and it should be at least 60% alcohol to have the greatest effect. And then ideally, you want to spread it all over the hands and then dry, like wait for them to dry, and try not to lose any like on the floor, because that can happen too. It's happened to me. I don't know if that's happened to other people, but so I mean, hand washing is the best thing that you can do. And then I tell people sing happy birthday, and then we'll tell you like how long you should be washing your hands for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That'll work. It's a
it's a
nice,
good.
happy song.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Kitty here in Iowa as well. Is
Mhm.
it safe to pick up carry out food? So we talked a little bit about the delivery. How about picking up the food?
So like going. The question is going
Carry out.
out to
Yep.
pick up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, the restaurant industry is really seems like they're doing a really good job in maintaining hygiene. They're not letting people go into their restaurants. They have like an outside pickup area usually, and so you know. But what I have seen is a lot of people that will like stand around very close to each other waiting for their order.
Mm.
So if I think it really depends. Again, you're reducing that risk of if somebody else like picked it up for you and then delivered it, like you're reducing that risk that you would have, and because instead you're doing it. But if you're going out and picking up food and they're waiting around with a bunch of people, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of the social distancing. So I mean, it depends on the situation, but in general, it's probably okay.
Okay. Okay.
If it stays open, like if things stay open for.
Right. Right. And I know a lot of people, of course, when you get on social media, which is the next section we're going to get into, but when you get on social media, a lot of people, there's been a lot of judgment and things of that nature that I've seen flying around social media of people who, why are you even out, going out to food, picking up food? This virus is going on. Where some people have the mindset, we have local businesses and restaurants who are not going to survive if we don't at least try and help give them some sort of revenue, right? So a lot are just trying to support local business owners so that they can continue to stay open after this is over, because this is a hard hit to many people
Mm.
financially. So there's different thoughts out there, and not going to debate whether one is right or not, but there is that thought that I still want to go out and support my local business and help. So if you're going to do that, just be as safe as you can and do the
Yeah.
right things and make the right decisions. But as we talk about social media, I've had to stay off of it I don't go on social media as much. I do have to because of my business. But the amount of news, the amount of misinformation that's swirling, the amount of conspiracy theories that are swirling, and all this is so much. I almost say it's a lot of noise in a way. And so I have to pull myself away from that and not get lost in that noise, because it can take you down a very depressing stage if you do. But I have a question that came from Betty in Tennessee. And this
Mhm.
has been something that has been swirling around on social media. I've had multiple people send it to me in many different forms, and it's around using Advil and ibuprofen versus Tylenol. There is information swirling on social media that ibuprofen can accelerate the virus if you have it. So the recommendation is to use acetaminophen or
Mhm.
Tylenol. What has been your experience with? Have you heard this? And if you have, what has is there any data to show that? Is there any cause that we should be concerned about using ibuprofen?
See, I have heard about that. I think it was like on March 18th that the World Health Organization recommended that people suffering COVID-19 symptoms avoid taking ibuprofen after there was, I think, a case in France where it appeared that using anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen appeared to worsen the effects of the virus. But since that time, there's been a retraction, I guess, for all intents and purposes, where now they're saying there's no hard evidence to support that at this time. And so right now, seems like it's okay. Pick your favorite one. Obviously, there's risks with both medications that specifically, if you're like with ibuprofen, you can versus the Tylenol. So obviously take those risks into consideration, and we try to avoid long-term use of them anyway. But it I mean, I think that's definitely the internet sort of blowing things up out of proportion. So it again, as far as I know, and honestly, the best source right now is Dr. Fauci from.
Right,
Yeah, I think anything he says, he's
right.
an expert in this. This is his field.
Yes,
He's amazing. Written so many books. Like, if he's saying giving you advice, then I would listen to him.
right.
And then all these random internet trolls, um, take it with a grain of salt.
Right, right. And that's what I've been telling people. If you don't hear it from the CDC or WHO, you can't validate it with either of those organizations.
Yeah.
Pretty much at that point, the data is probably unfounded. But yes, I am a Dr. Fauci fan all the way. And so I do listen to him quite often. Betty also had a question from Tennessee around, do we know if mosquitoes can transfer this virus to humans?
I did some thinking and some research on this. I haven't seen that as of right now. It looks like it's most likely an animal source, potentially, that where the transmission is coming from. But again, it's so new, the data is so limited right now that it doesn't look like it. But maybe that will change.
Right, right. No, that's fair. That's fair. We also have a question from Chris in North Carolina, and his question is this really as bad as the media makes it seem? Is it more dangerous than car accidents, smoking? Looking into the science, it seems like there's a lot of misinformation. So, is the panic truly justified and warranted?
I think that car accidents, for example, don't spread exponentially. I don't think that this is necessarily fair to compare car accidents or deaths from car accidents, or deaths from smoking to this particular pandemic. Um, I think that it is bad in the sense, again, that it's spreading exponentially and we don't understand it completely, and we don't have a vaccine, we don't have a treatment. Some people are getting it so bad that they're just dying very quickly. So I think that the panic is, in my opinion, humble opinion, is justified at this point. Especially if you think of it, it's coronavirus is in the same family as SARS. And I don't know if anybody remembers back in, like, I think it was 2002, when that happened. It was very lethal, and it was contained because it seemed like the world was not as global as it is now, and not as connected. And so now here we are. We're to that point where we're now sharing even viruses, and we're sharing them quickly. So I think, I'm not trying to cause like anxiety or increase fear, but I think we do need to be aware. We do need to be cautious, and again, just you never know what's going to happen. So
Yeah, and that's true. And so let's say the world did open back up in June, and best case scenario, what's to stop this from snowballing again? Because who's to say we're going to have a vaccine or antibodies ready at that time? We may or we may not. And if we open it back up, could it just start all over again? Because somebody might have it again and don't know, and whatnot. Is this something that is going to be something we're going to have to deal with until we can actually get a vaccine and antibiotics to treat it? Which they're saying, what, 12 to 18 months for potentially a vaccine?
yeah, I think if we once we do open back up, I mean, we'll probably see a lot of cases, because again, people have never been exposed to it, will then become exposed. But also, right now, and the model that we're using, there's immunity that's being developed in the communities that wasn't previously there, and so we're doing this like stay at home and these quarantine orders is again to like slow the burden on the healthcare system, also to give time for the body to, anybody who gets it in a mild form to build antibodies and be able to fight it off, and then that will then be protective to other members of the community. So if there's a possibility that we could have a resurgence of cases and it could get, a lot of deaths, but I mean, again, we have to take it as it comes, and eventually, I guess governments will have to make a decision about whether to open up or not. And hope, and I guess we cannot necessarily get mad at them if they make that decision and things happen, because they're just probably working with the information that they have at the time. So.
Right. We have Kathy in Iowa who has a question. Where do we find reliable data for research information from other countries and states? So I know we've mentioned the CDC and WHO as outlets that I know you and I definitely leverage and look at as we're looking at this pandemic expand. But is there any other reliable data sources that you're aware of where we can get information, not only for what's going on here in the US, but what's going on in other countries?
Johns Hopkins has a resource center that it's like a page that they're like tracking cases in other countries around the world, as well as deaths from the virus. So I think that's a really good source that I could think of.
Okay. So let's go into, as we start to wrap up our session, and this has been awesome. So thank you again for taking time to do this, because you actually are going to work after this. So my thoughts and prayers are definitely going to be with you and all of the staff who's out there as essential workers. But if someone in our household gets the virus, what should we do?
So a lot of it depends on the resources that you have. So I've been thinking a lot about, people in other countries, maybe research for countries. They don't have the option of like quarantining one member of the household if they get the virus. So a lot of it depends on the resources that you have. But at a minimum, I would say try to give them their own space in the house. Like if there's a room that they can stay in, if you're caring for them, definitely wear a mask. Be washing your hands or using gloves. And then I would say be wise to monitor their temperature regularly. Be checking on you can get one of those little pulse ox. That'd be smart. Check on that as well. And then, common things that you would use to fight like the cold, lots of fluids, good food, rest. And then, of course, if they take a turn for the worse, make sure to call 911 or be consulting your doctor along the way.
Okay. And how can we build our immunity and our immune systems to potentially fight this? So what are some, like for myself, I take supplements, right? I am slamming olive leaf extract, turmeric, um, oil of oregano, a multivitamin, calcium. I mean, I have an immunity. I have ginseng. I do ginger. I make smoothies with tons of vegetables. So I'm working on just trying to use those natural sources. But what do you recommend as a way, or some of the things you've used, since you're a strong man and all of that as well? You're definitely in health and wellness. Do you recommend we do or use to or buy or have on hand to boost our immunity?
Yeah, I love all of that. That's amazing.
I'm
You're
trying,
like
girl. I'm trying.
a natural pharmacy over there.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, I think the main things, kind of like we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, getting rest, hydrating, eating good food. So like a lot of examples of immune boosting foods include like berries. They have a lot of antioxidants in them that can help your immune system. Anything with like zinc, selenium, magnesium. So, for example, eggs, like with eating the yolk itself. Pumpkin seeds have a lot of minerals in them that can help boost the immunity. Fatty fish can help you to lower your inflammation. And then like the DHA and the EPA within them can help to activate certain immune cells. So beans, legumes have a lot of zinc, ginger, as you mentioned, to decrease inflammation. Take a multivitamin, your favorite one, but obviously check to make sure it actually has what it says that it has. So have you heard of like USP certification? It's like an outside like certifying body to make sure that whatever's stated in the supplement is actually there, since it's not a regulated industry. I think I said that right.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, those are just some suggestions for how to kind of build up that immune system. I mean, this time, man, like you guys are lucky you can stay home, become your best self,
Right.
really like self-reflection. Like I heard people are meditating.
Right.
I love it. Take this time, like really like develop a new skill, learn how to eat healthy. Like, it's I would say it's a blessing in disguise for
I
a
would
lot
have
of
to
people,
agree. I would have to agree. It's a lot of
So,
great downtime. It's
yeah.
giving me time to do stuff, and I'm actually reevaluating. Did I really need to be doing all those things I was doing before? Now that I'm actually sitting still and I have time to actually get some things done that I've been meaning to get done. So it really does make you reevaluate where are you spending your time and was it worth where you were spending your time? So yeah, definitely. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I'm bored. I want to go out and whatnot. And I get it because you don't want to be in the house all day. It's about to be nice weather. So I totally get it. But also I try to look for the positive in it as well. And it's really been helping to center me back and do things like this, have conversations with you that I can get out to the world, right?
Mm.
So we have a few more questions. We have a question from Angie in Iowa. For states like ours, Iowa, we're still ahead of the virus, right? We're not like a New York, which is my hometown, and it crushes me to see what New York is going through because that is my hometown. Yeah, they're having it rough, very, very rough. But what do you recommend that states that don't have that much? I think right now we're in the 400 range of people who've been tested and positive. How can we proactively slow the break, or what do you wish those on the coast would have done more proactively? So what do you think New York could have maybe done or California could have done, if anything, in your opinion? And this is solely your opinion, where we know you're not speaking on behalf of anybody else, just your humble opinion.
The stay-at-home orders. I heard that in New York, I like had a friend that was there that she was saying that when this first started, she had people who were off work and they were like, hey, let's go to the bars, let's go to the clubs, and they just partied all night long. You know, like it was like a vacation for them. Which again, like people need to have fun. I get that, relieve stress, but yeah, I think that,
yeah, that didn't help. Didn't help. Low spread. I get it.
Yeah. So definitely the stay-at-home orders, which I think that again the governments of states have really they've been doing a good job with that. I think at this point, taking it seriously. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting too to see kind of how maybe slowly people were like, well, maybe we should worry about this. You know, it's kind of like from January to now, just like the little bit of information you'd see in the news, and then started spiraling and spiraling. It's very interesting to be alive at this time in this situation, and you know, I don't envy any of our leadership at all.
Right.
Had to make some very hard decisions. So, yeah, I mean, that would be the main thing is, you know, being at home is good, guys. Please.
We can't say that enough. Stay at home. Stay at home. Only go out for essentials. And if you're in a huge family, maybe designate one person to go out that goes out for the family. The whole family does not need to have to go out to the store.
That's
you know,
mitigate
that risk, right? And just have one person go. If they're going to be out anyway, just have them go and that be that person, and mitigate this risk as much as possible. And take the time to build up your immune system, right? Do that exercising and stuff to build up your immune system.
The sacrificial lamb, huh?
Right. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, that's great advice, actually.
Yeah. So we have a question from Kathy. So if face masks, this one did make me chuckle a little bit when I read it. So if face masks don't work, why do doctors use them? Would light gloves help clean? Would light gloves help keep hands clean? So I think we talked about this a little bit, and it's a special type of mask that you need to wear to protect you from the virus. It's not any type of mask. The N95s, those respiratory masks, are the masks that I heard that really are the masks that protect from viruses such as these. But I will let you go ahead and answer Kathy's question. They don't work. Why are y'all using them, doctor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. I think, again, it goes back to there's risk in everything that we do, and we do our best right now with what we have, and the masks are better than nothing. But I mean, yeah, it's better than nothing, honestly. That's all I can say. We don't have a foolproof way to make sure that we don't get it. And also, we're getting exposed at like higher volumes than the average person. So, you know, we're just gonna get more virus like in our coming at us. So again, it's just trying to lower how much actually goes into our bodies. And then light gloves, I think, you know, again, they will help keep your hands clean. But again, if you're using the gloves when you're touching your phone and then you take the gloves off and then you touch your phone, I mean, so you just be aware of your hands. I never realized how much I touch my face until now.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So just be aware of yourself, and again, if you are going to wear the gloves, and don't touch your face, and just wash your hands. We'll get through this together.
Yeah. I had read somewhere an article, a doctor had written that when masks were invented, they were really not to protect the doctors from the patients, but to protect the patients from the doctor, because of if they're doing surgeries or things of that nature, if they're talking, you know, that stuff that can be coming out too, and they don't want to take a very sterile situation and make it not sterile. So that's why they do all of the additional to keep it as clean as possible. So I thought that was an interesting perspective because I had never thought of that before, but that's something I'd read.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, also, yeah, again, going back to we're getting exposed to the virus a lot more than a person. And if we're ruling out COVID, whether you have it or not, and if say you don't have it, if we didn't wear the mask, then we could have potentially infected you. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Right. So we have a question from Bev here in Iowa. Iowa was showing me a lot of love with these questions. So her question is, and we talked about this a little bit, so I think we answered it on how we should be handling our mail. Shoes. Now, shoes is very interesting, and you talked about that, right, in our packages, assuming the viruses can live. So basically what you've said is put your shoes in one spot in the house when you get in the house. It carries a lot of bacteria. We talked about how long the viruses live on the different surfaces. Just be very aware of that. And if you wear gloves, discard them immediately. Or if you touch the package, wash your hands immediately, what have you. That's the best you can do right now to be as proactive in preventing the spread. But if there's anything else that you might want to add to that, as we had a nice little in-depth conversation about it at the very beginning, by all means.
I think, we have to also live in addition to being cautious. So you got to do the best that you can, and just try to be as hygienic as you can. And these are good life skills too, actually. Honestly, just saying.
I know this isn't just for the virus, y'all. This is for just life in general. Good hygiene.
Yeah,
I agree.
I feel like everybody's cleaning their house now, like
right.
getting the bleach out. Like, where were you guys like 3 months ago? Like, oh man, no judgment.
Right. But now that you actually have the time, you're not busy, right? So
you
have the time to do it. But good point.
Show your house some love,
Right. And the last question we have is from Kathy here in Iowa as well. And her question is, do you feel, and I think I already know the answer to this one, what you're going to say, but do you feel it is wise to return to business as usual before the virus peaks and declines?
Again, my humble opinion, I don't think so. I think at this point we've come this far. We've shut everything down. I think we might as well just ride it out. But again, easier said than done, thinking about a lot of people and their financial situation. But I mean, if leadership ends up deciding to resume business as usual and people die, then we're going to get, it's a risk that they're going to have to decide for the community. So, but I mean, we cannot like just live in fear either. So that's a hard question. That's a really hard question.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I don't envy our leaders.
I mean, say what you want about them, but whatever your opinion, whatever your left wing, right wing, that's the election is more important. Elections are more important than ever in these situations. Right? You can really see like, did your vote actually really does matter?
Right.
I was thinking about that. So, hey, we have a presidential election coming up, guys.
Right.
Make sure you get out there because you don't know the future, and these are the people that are making the decisions for all of us.
Right. And don't just vote in the presidential elections. Vote for Congress. Vote for your House. Vote for your Senate. It's not just the president. You have an entire government we need to be out there voting for. So make sure you're doing that, right? And we're voting. Well, Dr. Danya, it has been great spending this pretty much hour with you today talking about what you know so far, your experience being in the ER, being a doctor, working this every day, seeing it every day, having to deal with it mentally, emotionally, physically, and whatnot. If people wanted to connect with you, I follow you on Instagram, so I got to put a little plug in there for Instagram. I love your videos. Every time you go live, it pops up on my phone. I'm like, oh, Dr. Danya is live. I got to go check her out. But how can people connect with you? Is this the best way through Instagram? And if it is, can you share a little bit of how they can get connected to you on Instagram?
Sure. Thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate the support, and again for this opportunity to have this conversation and talk to everybody. I think we forget that people are listening, and we really appreciate all your support. I do want to say, like, a lot of communities, a lot of restaurants, a lot of amazing people have shown me and my colleagues a lot of kindness. So really grateful for that. But my page is it's Instagram at the Fit Psychiatrist, and then you can also look me up on Facebook. It's Danya Anouti. That's my page. So it's just my name. So come check me out. Really appreciate the support, and look forward to seeing what else that you have up your sleeve, Paula, in all of your amazing endeavors. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being my first guest on the Kime Zone. I love it. You know, I got to stay with my martial arts. This is the focus zone. So, again, you guys, this is as part of my business. One of the areas I focus on is self improvement. And I just wanted a separate platform to just have people like Dr. Danya and others who can just come and help us be better people and not focus on the business, but focus on ourselves and be the best that we can be, the best version that we can be at all times. So again, Dr. Danya, thank you so much for coming out today. My prayers, seriously, and thoughts are with all of the essential workers, the nurses, the doctors, everybody who's out there in this time of pandemic. It's crazy out there. And for the rest of us who don't have to be out there, stay home. Stay home. Stay home. Enjoy your families. Enjoy this time. Be productive. Find something positive to do. Start just getting that positive energy going and taking care of yourself. And so, again, thank you, Danya. And I don't know what my next episode is going to be yet, but it'll be a great one when I decide what it's going to be. Everyone, everyone, have a great day, a great rest of the week, and we'll be talking again soon.
Take care.
Bye.